All right, has everybody had a pretty good week so far? Pretty much?
Yep.
Good. Okay, I'm going to go through and do roll really fast. Let's see. We have Janae Nielsen, Cassie Nelson, Amy Ferry, Ashley Robert.
Yes.
Okay, and then we have Hanley.
Yes.
All right. Tatiana.
Yes. Hello.
Oh, hello. Aubrey.
Hi.
Hi. Nicole. You're here.
Yes. Yes.
Let's see. Natalie.
Yes.
Excellent. And Emma.
Yep,
Has
I'm here.
Excellent. Has everybody heard me call their name?
Yes.
All right. And Sierra is here.
Yes.
Excellent.
I'm
Okay. Is there anybody with us today that did not hear me call their name? All right. The first word for today is red. All right, there were a couple of things that I wanted to go over today, and there are a couple of things, questions that people had that we also need to go over. Somebody had a question, and I cut you off just right when I started recording. Um, who was it that I
yes.
cut off? Was that Ashley?
Yeah. I had one question to the carpomorphic abstraction because I just wanted to make sure I was going to finish it right. Because last week you had mentioned that mentioned plastering it. I wasn't sure if that was a must before it's painted. If yeah.
No, I did.
Or,
It was paper mache.
or paper mache. Yeah. Sorry, that's the word. So paper
Yeah,
mache.
that's necessary because otherwise the styrofoam will not hold the paint.
Okay. And then the paper, that glue or whatever it is for the paper mache, is that part of the kit or do we need to get it?
The kit has in it a Tupperware container or Rubbermaid or something like that container that has a sack of glue in it and a sack of flour. And you can usually you can divide that in half and mix the glue half and half with water and then half of the flour and use that as your goo for the paper mache stuff and then mix up the rest of it and use the rest of it. I would recommend also using those heavy duty shop paper towels instead of regular paper towels, and that'll really help. That's exactly what that picture number 1 that I send out to everybody, that's how that person did it. Then after it's all dry, you can sand it down or you can just paint it the way it is.
Okay, no, that's very helpful. Yeah, I was wondering if that's what it was. Okay, perfect. Then thank you.
You're welcome. And that will lead us to our second code word of the day, which is goo, describing the texture of that paper mache. Now, a couple of more people have joined us. I can't see your names. Would you please let me know who you are?
Allie.
All right. And then who else joined us? Because we were missing one person. Was it Shu Chen? Megan? Maria? Catherine? Michael? Yen Chen? Xiaosheng? Or Cheyenne? Any of you guys?
I think you missing me. Xiaoxiong.
Xiaosheng? Okay. Thank you. All right. Today I wanted to go over the quiz really quick, talk about the module for the quiz, and then I've also had a number of questions about the annotated bibliography, and I wanted to go over that as well. Several people have asked about MLA style. The MLA style is explained in the 11-minute video at the top of the annotated bibliography description, and you can just refer to that and go through that video. If you have any questions, you can also just do a search MLA, like if you're doing a live interview or anything like that. There are MLA standards for all sorts of different kinds of contingencies. And we'll refer back to that and discuss that some more after we go over the quiz. So I am going to get to the quiz now. I hope. Give me just a second here. All right, can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay, this is a quiz for Module 4. It's chapters 5 and 12. This first question deals with the delineated forms in space, and I'm just going to show this really quick little video. This is about a guy named Adam Thomas, his sculpture, My Better Half / Opposites Attract. Okay, can everybody hear the sound?
Yes.
Yes.
Laminated tube and period to make the rails that figured out the layout on the.
So did you mortise and tenon these into the?
No, they're just clamped on, double screwed, recessed, and sucked up. These are just 2-inch dowels that I ran through on a table saw. This is my better half. All this is a track. So this is the end of it.
Okay, that was just a short little bit about him talking about this sculpture. Who can explain to me what delineated forms are when we're talking in a 3D context? Anyone?
Aren't they like the negative space, like the shape of the circle that the wood forms create and the interior rectangles in that? It's the space that's void, basically.
Yeah, the delineated forms are the negative spaces, just like you're describing, that are essentially outlined by the sculpture. And those outlines can be actual lines sometimes, but more often than not, they're the changes in structure or shape. For example, just like Amy was saying, the delineated forms on this, one of them is made by these circles. There's no actual lines there, but these circles of wood have outlined this negative form, which is a circle. Another delineated form is going to be right here. The rungs and sides of the ladders, even though these are not actual lines, they are outlining another negative form or negative space. Can anybody else see any other delineated forms?
I see the shadows making some forms and lines.
I think that's a good one. Because these shadows are present on the floor, and then the negative space is going to be these light areas, excuse me, in between the shadow lines. So that's good. Excellent. So the delineated means it's outlined. That's what that word means. But it's not outlined with an actual line more often than not. It's outlined by either the presence of the shape or a change in texture or silhouette. So, one delineated form is going to be this front circle. One is going to be this back circle. All these rungs with the sides of the ladder make delineated forms. I like what you just said about the shadows being cast. Those feel like they're making delineated forms as well. Okay, so there's several different options there. Excellent. All right, now this question is a good one. Identify the two most common rigid materials artists or sculptors use in constructing artworks. Now here we have four options. The four options are metal, plastic, wood, and glass. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get rid of that line. That is not the correct answer, by the way. What do you think the two most common out of those four different options are?
I would think metal and wood.
Why would you think that?
Because I feel like most, I feel like wood is very common and it's a lot cheaper than most building materials. And also with metal, I know like a lot of sculptors will sculpt in wood or in clay or something and then cast it in metal. But then also they'll build structures using pre-existing metal.
I think that's a really good answer. Excellent. And I would say plastic is a relatively new medium, and that has not been common in the history of art because it is so new. And glass has been really difficult to work with and historically very hard to access. Romans would bury wealthy people with glass and other jewels because glass was considered on the same order as gemstones and precious metal. So I think that that's right. The metal and wood is the best answer. So very good. Can fiber arts be made durable in outdoor conditions by adding a hardening compound?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, that's a good answer. But there's an awful lot of different kinds of stuff you can add to fiber arts to make them durable and be able to endure the outside conditions. So this answer to number 3 is definitely true. So very good. Now let's talk about this for a little bit. This is one of Henry Moore's sculptures, large reclining figure. Where are some of the negative spaces on this? I'd like to hear from like 3 different people. What is negative space?
The negative space is where the part of the sculpture isn't. So like under the arm looking shapes on the right, and in that gap between the structure in the middle, basically where there isn't anything is the negative space.
Excellent, very good. It's an excellent answer. Okay, you mentioned under the arms right here, and this gap right here in between this kind of structure and that. Can anybody else name other places where there are negative space?
So there is what maybe to the left, what might be legs or something. There's negative space underneath.
Right, good. Where else? Let's hear from somebody who hasn't spoken yet. So far, all those answers have been completely right. Where are some more negative spaces?
Well, wouldn't one be like part of where the head's at, where it's kind of chipped?
Right there? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, negative space. All of those observations are excellent. Negative space is essentially everywhere the sculpture's not. So right over here, which looks like a gigantic toe knuckle, that's negative space right above it. Right under here, this that somebody earlier was commenting about, this is somebody earlier was commenting about, this that you just commented about, all of those are negative spaces. So yes, excellent. Now here's the question, what would this look like if we got rid of all the negative space?
I feel like the negative space makes the whole sculpture feel like more breathable. So if it was gone, it would feel more stagnant and have less movement. So I think the negative space really adds to it, making it a dynamic piece, like it says in the text.
I think that's a really good answer. And also, if we fill up all the spaces where the sculpture's not, this would just be a big white glob. I mean, it wouldn't be dynamic. It wouldn't be, there'd almost be no point to having it there because it wouldn't be a piece of art. So yeah, excellent answer, excellent observation. Very good. All right, here's a good question. What is forced perspective and when would you use it? Anybody here ever do set design?
Okay, no, but I might have an example. So, I live in Utah right now. Well, okay, maybe everyone does. I normally go to Hawaii, so, but in Thanksgiving Point, they have an art exhibition called Light of the World, and it's sculptures of Jesus Christ. And there's one sculpture where it's like the story of Lazarus and the like Christ like raises Lazarus or whatnot. And so the sculpture has Lazarus down on the ground, and then up the hill a little bit is like a larger, like a bunch of stone. And it's like forced perspective in the way that like if you look through it, the lines like guide you directly to Lazarus, who's like down at the bottom. So, but that might be wrong.
Well, it's the artist is forcing you to look where the artist wants you to look, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a good example. When would the artist use it?
I think when they want like your attention to be drawn somewhere, or like when they're trying to really draw your attention to the focal point or what they want the focal point of their work to be.
All right, excellent. That's a really good example. Can anybody give me another example? So what Allie is just talking about is an artist is using dynamic lines to force the attention of somebody exactly where they want that attention focused. I think that's a good example. Has any, I didn't hear an answer, but has nobody worked on set design or anything? There's usually stages you want the, a lot of the times when people are doing plays, they want the audience to believe that the stage is actually bigger than it is. And when that happens, what they'll do is design the set so that the lines will converge visually and make it look like the room is longer. And so in that case, the artist is trying to make the set look bigger. Another example is that statue of David, Michelangelo's David. If you actually had a true image of it from the side, you would see that the feet proportionately are a lot smaller than the head would suggest. But that is because Michelangelo is making it knowing that people looking at the bottom of it, standing at the bottom, would see the statue receding. And if he made the head proportionate to the feet in real life, the head would actually look small because of where the viewer stands. And so in that case, the forced perspective is to make the whole figure of David look proportionately exact from the viewpoint of the regular sized person standing at the pedestal at the base. And so sometimes forced perspective is used so that everything looks exactly the way that you hope or expect it to look as or the ideal way for the audience to view it. So that's three different things. One, like Ali was talking about, where you force the audience to look intently on the focal point that you've decided as the artist. One is to make a space or an object appear larger than it actually is. And then third, to make the whole thing appear ideally the way it should appear, even though you know that you're distorting it in the real world. So three different ways of using forced perspective. And in every instance, it's the artist trying to control, like French was doing with his Lincoln sculpture, the artist trying to control the viewer's experience somewhat. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right, let's hear from somebody else who hasn't spoken. Which of these three images do you think are of a sculpture that really activates space well? When you go to this question, one thing that's really important is there is not a single correct answer. You pick one and you explain why you think that way.
I've already spoken, but I still have an answer if that's okay.
Sure.
I feel like, in my personal opinion, A activates the space around it really well. And I think it's because it's placed in an outdoor setting that it kind of causes my eye to try to find angles and things similar to the sculpture in the surrounding area. So it kind of activates that space around it more than just the sculpture itself.
What do you think about these diagonal lines here?
They create the energy and the motion.
Okay, I think Sierra and Amy are both really talking about this well. This activates space because the environment that it's in, and also it looks like it's in the process of moving. It almost like it's leaning against the air or wants to lean against these trees. And I think both of those answers are good. Can anybody talk about why this one activates space? Has Nicole said anything? Nicole, can you say something about this?
Hi. No, I haven't spoken. I think because it's like exploding that it looks like it's, I don't know if that's right, but that's the only thought I have.
So how is it activating the space? What are the toothpicks doing that makes you feel like they're exploding?
I don't know.
Does this feel like it's really still, or does it feel like it's caught in the moment of expansion? Nicole, do you
I
feel
think
like
it's
this
like
is
caught in the moment.
okay? All right, good. And that is one of the ways it's activating space, isn't it? It feels like it's expanding out to the area around it. Can you think of any other way it might be activating space? I think these irregular shaped arms almost feel like they're reaching out as well. So I think both the feeling of dynamic motion and that the fact that these feel like they're reaching out, both of those serve to help activate space. So good, Nicole. Can anybody speak to this one? Thank you. Can anybody speak to this one as to why this might be activating space?
Well, the thing I can think that we activating base because it's showing motion as to where the person looks like they're moving forward instead of back. And there's a lot of depth in it to where you can see the facial expressions on the sculpture as well as the shape. There is, I noticed that you can see negative form and positive form in there.
I think those are all really good observations. Excellent. Yeah, it looks like he's the subject is leaning towards somebody or motioning or stepping towards somebody, reaching out towards somebody, looking at somebody. I think this looks like to me that it's activating because it's leaning over and directly engaging the environment. This looks like it's activating space because it's caught in a moment of dynamic motion. And this is activating space because it looks like the object is trying to interact with the viewers. So all three of those are good answers. So excellent. Thank you guys. Very good. Okay. I would like to hear at least 3 reasons from 3 different people as to why wax is most often cast into another material.
Because wax melts easily, and it won't hold its shape in like warm weather.
Yeah, it has a very low melting point. Excellent. Let's get another reason.
It's used to cast things to get detail, but then it can be melted away if it is put into a furnace or some other place.
Yeah, it's very easy to manipulate, isn't it? So excellent. Very good. Okay, let's get one third reason. Let's hear from Xiaosheng, Tatiana, or Hannah Lee, or Natalie. What is another reason why wax is most often cast into another material? We've heard low melting point, easy to give texture to and remove. What's the third one?
I would say it's fairly malleable in general, which kind of encompasses both of those things. But, you know, if you were ever a little kid playing in your parents' wax warmer and got in trouble for it, like, you know how easily it is to mold and to put into shapes. So if you were going to cast another item and you wanted something easily that you could easily carve first, that could also be an option. I also know that the Egyptians, like the steles they used to write out stuff, were initially made of wax because there was an easier reset point. So
Yeah, the writing tablets that Babylonians used too were basically just 2 wax coated boards. So yeah, excellent. Let's hear one more reason. So very good. Good answer. Let's hear from Hannah Lee, Xiaosheng, or Tetiana.
I think because it's soft and easy to use, you can create everything you want from it. It almost.
Yeah, and that's something that several people have already talked about. So yeah, it's very easy to manipulate.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm looking for just one more answer. What kinds of materials was wax cast into? It was cast into precious metals. Even though gold is really easy to work with, why do you think wax was used first?
Because it's cheaper.
Yes, excellent. It is incredibly cheap compared to everything else it's cast into. That is the third answer I was looking for. Excellent. So the three main ones are low melting point, easy to work, and cheap. And it says give one reason. So you just have to list one of those three reasons for this question. So excellent. Now, which material has the highest plasticity or one of the highest plasticity ratings? It is also one of the oldest mediums that people have been sculpting with.
I could be wrong, but is it clay?
Yes, that's exactly it. Clay encompasses a lot of diverse materials, but it has one of the highest plasticity ratings. Think in traditional Mayan culture, when somebody would pass away, they would usually be cremated, and some of the ashes would be mixed into the town's clay source by their water. And from our perspective, that may seem a little nasty, but the ashes, what that meant was everything in the future, every pot, every utensil that the community made will be made with some portion of that person who had passed away. So forever into the future, that person, some part of them would still be part of the community. I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, clay is material with one of the highest plasticity ratings. So very good. Okay, does anybody know what an armature is? And when an artist would use it? Has any of you guys seen Kubo and the Two Strings? Or Chicken Run? Or Nightmare Before Christmas? Or The Incredible Mr.
Yes.
Fox?
Yeah, with the skeletons.
Yeah, so what do all those movies have in common?
Wasn't it some
Don't-
stop motion?
Yeah, it's all stop motion. What do they use to keep those figures in the positions they need to be? Does anybody know?
Isn't it almost like a skeleton or something
Yeah,
like
that's-
that?
Like a
Yeah.
skeleton wire figure.
Yeah, exactly. An armature is that interior skeleton or support structure because the material itself would not be able to hold the position it needs to be in, or it wouldn't be able to stand up by its own. So a lot of the times when people use a material with a high plasticity rating, like the oil clay in Chicken Run, for example, they need to have the armature to hold it in place. Anybody know the name Ray Harryhausen?
No.
Are any of you guys old enough to remember the first Jurassic Park movie?
Yes.
Okay, good. Ray Harryhausen was a pioneer of stop motion movie making. He did a lot of stop motion dinosaur studies, mimicking birds and things like that for the original Jurassic Park movie. And as he was working on it, another team was working on computer graphics, computer animation, and they were able to adapt the armature motion that Ray Harryhausen pioneered with dinosaurs and adapt that to 3D computer animation technology. And that's why those dinosaurs look the way they do. They were able to adapt and use both of those. But if you guys ever get to a point where you can't sleep, get on YouTube and look up Ray Harryhausen and his use of the armature. Some interesting stuff there. Yeah, but whenever we use anything that has a high plasticity rating, it doesn't hold its shape very well, or it's not strong enough to support its own weight, that's when we use an armature, an inside skeleton to support it. So excellent. Very good. All right, now this question, we go down to the question. The text talks about how scale can generally make a viewer feel or respond in different ways to a work of art. And there are some specific there are some generalities for each of these three scales that we can touch on. To get full points for this question, what you'll need to do is write 2 sentences on each of these 3 scales for a total of 6 sentences. So you'll write a sentence about this scale and how it makes you feel, and a second sentence on how it makes you feel. Do the same, write 2 sentences on this scale. The work of art here is the man on the bench right here. That's not an actual person, that's actually a sculpture. And then you'll do the same thing, writing 2 sentences on this sculpture and this scale.
You said not to get too worked up about the content, but I feel like the content was so much of, so much a part of how the scale worked for that particular piece, if you know what I mean. I'm looking at the baby and I think, a baby when it comes into your life, is so big, it takes up all your space, all your time, everything. And so to me, the content of the sculpture was actually to point, what the scale did to me as the viewer. I don't know.
That's excellent. Right, when you answer this question, write that down. That'd be great.
Well,
yeah.
What I was saying was that, in the directions, it said, that not to get too caught up in the content, and I'm saying I feel like they're kind of all related. Let's see what it actually said. Yeah, watch that you do not get caught up in the content. I want you to think about the scale only. But in all of those, I feel like the content directly related to the scale. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think what I was trying to say is, I want to hear what you have to say about your relation to the piece, as opposed to going on about how this is a girl baby.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Okay, so we're looking at a baby. It's monumental, and the content that relates to the size is the fact that the baby, it is this major miracle that everybody takes for granted, and it sucks up almost your entire life. For those first 12 years. Then when they're 12, they're tall enough to reach the stove, and they can feed themselves. You don't have to worry anymore. But yeah. So the content as it relates to the scale. For this one, the scale, this person almost becomes invisible because it's easy to take the person for granted. Or the individual is the same size as a normal person, so it's easier to relate to. And both of those are an example of content as it relates to scale. And then this one, instead of talking about the use of crosses historically in religious art, we would talk about, why is this cross on top of a Coke can? And how does that relate to this tiny, minuscule scale? Does it make us focus more on the figure and the ridiculous overimportance of icons like Coke. I mean, I actually heard a person say it's not Christmas until you see those Coke polar bears. And our whole concept of Santa Claus today, the roly-poly man with the red coat, bright red coat, and the white beard, is a direct result of Coca-Cola marketing. You know, and maybe that is an example of content as it relates to the scale. I think Slinkatichu is trying to show us something similar to what Andy Warhol was doing when he was turning Campbell soup cans into icon paintings. So, so when you look at this, talk about the content as it relates to the scale. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Now this one, the answers that we get on the written questions, as long as you can articulate your why, I don't really care what the answer is. On this, we have a bone structure, and we have this skin structure. Both of these are integral to the sculpture itself, Angel of the North. And what this question is asking is, which is more important? I don't think that there is a correct answer, but you get the full points on this if you share your opinion and articulate the why. For example, I think the skin is the most important because otherwise you wouldn't be able to see that dramatic silhouette. And that dramatic silhouette gives all the power to the piece. Or I feel the skeleton is so important because if the skeleton wasn't there, you wouldn't have all the drama, those shadow lines, and there wouldn't be anything for that skin to hang on to. See, that's an example that I just gave justification for both answers. So pick whichever answer you want and articulate your why. Okay, does that make sense to people?
Yes.
All right, excellent. I'm going to turn off screen share now. Okay, and another thing I wanted to do was talk quickly about this module, and we'll talk more about it on Monday as well. I wanted to show just a couple examples of going into this module, and then just show a couple, just talk briefly about some of the artists that were picked out for this module as well. So let's see, I'm going to do share content again. Now the structure with skin, did it, until you saw Ghostbusters 2, did you have any idea? I always thought that the Statue of Liberty was solid. Or when I was young, I thought it was solid. I had no idea that there was all this girding inside holding that up. Does anybody know what that green is actually made of?
Copper?
Yeah, it's just plates of copper molded and then draped over this structure, this skin. I mean the girding. So this is a good example of a sculpture that is almost just entirely skin. We look at here at the Eiffel Tower. This is almost entirely a structure of girders. I mean, that's what the silhouette, if you've ever been there or seen it or seen close-up pictures of it, all it is cross braces making the building. The architect was told to build the world's tallest building essentially in the least amount of time and with the lowest amount of materials, and that was the shape he came up with, and it was all girding. So these are the two extremes. This is the skin, and this is the structure. And as you go through the the research and watch these videos, all these artists are very conscious of that relationship of structure to skin. And they don't all use them the same way. Anish Kapoor, honestly, we'll make a structure and then coat it with the skin that's very reflective, so the skin almost disappears. And if we look down here a little bit, Richard Deacon will work on some stuff where all you see is the structure underneath. I think one thing I really like about Frank Gehry is that he's very aware of that play between structure and skin. And he'll design something with an interesting skin, and then he'll create the structure to support it. When many other architects will design something and then use the skin just to cover up the structure. And he approaches it slightly different. One of the things that he says, well, I'll watch. Let me play this really quick for you.
How do you?
Is that the right one? Oh no, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Yeah, this is a better one. This is just a really short video. Let me know if you hear the sound. Can everybody hear that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have always felt if you know what you're going to do in advance, then you won't do it. Your creativity starts with whether you're curious or not. Roll 'em. Go. Action. When you build a building, any building, start with the simple block model to see where that goes. Most of our cities are built with just faceless glass, only for economies and not for humanities. As an artist, I got constraints. Gravity is one of them. But within all those constraints, I have 15% of freedom to make my art. I'm always trying to express movement. I was fascinated with the fold, so basic to our first feelings of love and warmth. These ideas are scary as hell to tell to the client. They can reject you, and they will, but you got to find your own voice. Create the logic for it as you go. Stretch it into another place. I'm just telling you how I did it and why I did it. Whatever you do, promise me that every project you make or design, you'll take the risk of doing something for humanity. I'm Frank Gehry, and this is my masterclass. You would think I'd know when to quit.
I really like that short video. It introduces us to him. He is an architect that sees himself as a sculptor first and foremost. And I think it's really fascinating where he works actively with those ideas of structure and skin playing with each other. I think another really good artist is Buckminster Fuller. And this video was made shortly after the Florida Disney World was made, that huge dome there. Buckminster Fuller is the guy that makes those triangle domes that actually are the only architectural structure that gets stronger the bigger it gets. And so after you watch all those, I think you'll have a much better idea of what this project is about. Who has seen these videos already? That's too bad. That was something I asked everybody to look at before our meeting. But you'll definitely get an awful lot about those the structure and skin by watching those videos and learning about those artists. Now, this is the assignment. These are 3 examples of student works. Can anybody see a couple commonalities between these or among them? Some of the commonalities I want to point out are, do you see that there's this repeating shape, like a module that's made over and over again? Can everybody see that? Like in this case, it's 2 trapezoids put together. Here, there's a bunch of boxes. Here, it's these triangle type boxes that are kind of odd. Can everybody see the modules that are being made to create these things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Another thing to really pay attention to is that these are taking advantage of 3-dimensional space. Remember that Henry Moore sculpture, how it's laid out and it uses negative space to kind of emphasize itself? And those sculptures that we looked at briefly, like that red one and the toothpick explosion and the person carrying something, where they were engaging the space around them, I want you to be very aware of that as well. Some of the less successful student work I've seen has been when somebody has just made, instead of 3-dimensional modules, like these boxes or these forms or these triangle things, they just made flat shapes and tried to put them together. We don't want to do that. We want to make 3-dimensional modules. And you can refer to that polyhedra page, website for ideas. You can make cubes or crates or boxes like this. You can make pyramids. You can make, like here, the person just made this trapezoid shape and put them together. But the idea is you need to make several different modules like that. And then after you make them, find a place to put skin on them, not covering the whole thing. See how each box has maybe 1 or 2 sides that has the cardboard skin on? Like this has 2 sides. This has 1. This has 1. Can everybody see that? How many sides does each of these modules have paper on?
Maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah. So, and you can see the structure on the rest of the way. And here, it looks like each of these pairs of trapezoids has paper on one side, so you can look through and see. So when you go to put your paper on, that's the other thing I want you to really pay attention to. See how the paper is kind of hiding some of the structure? It's kind of hiding some of the structure. And then we get up here, it is almost behind and framing the structure in front of it. And then here it goes back to hiding and hiding. And then here it's almost behind everything. Here, most of the way, the paper is hiding what's behind it. When we don't want to do that so much, I like this better because here we have the papers in front, but the paper's also in back. Do you see what I'm saying? In some areas, you can go through and see the structure. You can see the object through the structure. And in some areas, the paper is hiding it. And so I want you to play with those ideas. Having a module that you can repeat, putting paper on some aspects or some faces of the module, and then as you stack this in space and put the modules together, use the paper to both hide and conceal, or both conceal and kind of frame the structure that you see. So from any perspective, you'll be able to see both paper as well as the sticks or the girders that you're using. Because when you get done, I want you to create something where both the skin and the structure are equally important. Does everybody understand that?
Do the shapes have to be the repeating shapes, or can you, I mean, I don't know what that would look like to have it be multiple shapes, but anyway, I was just wondering if you can mix and match, or if it just looks better to have it all be one uniform.
On this one, the modules are all identical. And on this one, with the cubes, they're not. Like this cube is not as long as this one. These are different shapes. And instead of being blocks, and instead of having a total rectangle here, the person cut a notch out. So I would say build the module, and then also experiment, if you want to experiment a bit with the module. So you can make the same thing in different sizes, or you can make the same thing with different kinds of variations. Like this, these are all blocks, but some of the blocks are shaped longer or shorter. Like this one has a little notch cut out. So you can make the module, but they do not have to be identical. You know, this is an this is an example where all the modules are identical. It doesn't have to be that way. You can do that, but you can also do this where the modules are very similar, but they're not identical. Does that make sense? So you can do either way.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions about that? Okay. Now I'm going to go back here a little bit to the annotated bibliography. As you, it requests MLA format of 8 sources. This YouTube video is only 11 minutes long, but it explains what MLA format is, and you can use that. To be completely honest, I'm not really a stickler. As long as your format is consistent all the way through, that's great. But we chose MLA because MLA is used most often in the arts type arena for writing. And down here, I had some examples, one not so good and one better one. Both of these are good examples of that MLA format in calling out the citation. And then this one, I don't particularly like this one. I put it in there because it's a good example of too short. This is more an example of the annotation I'm looking for. So remember in the first 7.A, I asked you to look at or list 10 of your own self-identifiers. And you don't have to share them with me or anything, but I want you to refer to that list when you find an artist who's not like you. Again, I don't want you to share that list with me, but keep it in mind as you look at your sources and use that to help direct what you annotate or what you remark on. Or you can use what really resonates with you about the artist's work, or ideally the best would be both. Like for example, if I was doing an annotation on Ai Weiwei and it was a short film about dropping his priceless Ming vase and then the subsequent cycladic idol style sculpture he made of himself doing it, what I might talk about is a little bit of Ai Weiwei's background, being kicked out of China, basically, and not allowed to return for years and years and years, and his frustration with how the Chinese government was supporting kind of a wholesale destruction of Chinese cultural history, and then talking a little bit about why I felt that video piece was so dramatic. So, and I would write all about that in 2 short paragraphs. And in that, I'm talking about why I think that piece resonates with me, but I'm also talking about a little bit of the things. Ai Weiwei is Chinese. I'm not Chinese. And but that is one of those elements that really makes him the artist that he is. And so I'm referencing that as well. Does anybody have any more questions about the annotated bibliography? Because if you get this right, the other two assignments, even though they look like they might be daunting, are going to be super, super easy. Because what you'll basically do is make a slide for each of your 8 citations, and then you'll basically talk about the paragraphs that you wrote for each of your slides. And then your last slide will just be a list of your works cited. So, and that's an easy way to make the PowerPoint. So, but the other thing to remember is that when you turn in your annotated bibliography, if you don't get perfect marks, I will write down in my comments as to why. You can revisit that, fix it, and resubmit it, and then email and tell me that you resubmitted it, and I'll go back and give you more points. So does anybody have more questions about this annotated bibliography?
I have not looked, but I'm sure I haven't read the this whole page that you've got up. Are there examples that you're showing, or is it just in those samples in the videos that people are the examples of the PowerPoints? Oh, the examples of the PowerPoints are on that playlist that has the link to it. Do those have and those have some of this annotated bibliographies, right? Don't they list their bibliographies at the end? But I don't know that they annotated. They don't have their annotations. They do have their bibliographies. Their annotations are basically the comments that they've given, or they freehand their comments from using their annotated bibliographies as notes. Okay. But yeah, I would definitely, as you work on your bibliography, definitely look at these playlists and check them out. And that will help quite a bit. And there are some good, most of them are really good examples. There are a couple of bad examples, and you'll be able to tell right away which the bad examples are. Most of them are really good. If we go, I'm going to click to this. This is one of the playlists. Now you look at these, notice the time, 8:21, 6:43, 7:43. These are really good time-wise. This is way too short. This is way long. We go down here. We get Frank Gehry. This is a little bit long, but it's not too bad. You don't want to go over 10 minutes. This is a good length. This is getting longer. This is way too short. This is a good length. This is a good length, and this is a good length. So what do you see that's in common with the good lengths? Minimum 6 minutes, max 10. All right, you go over 10, it starts getting way too long. You go under 6, like 3 minutes, you lose points, but also you don't get a lot of information. And you can pretend that your audience is you 20 years in the future, where you've forgotten why you thought this artist was so amazing. And you'll talk about their work. Let's see. Let's see, I believe, yeah, and we can look at the end of this one. This one is on Damien Hirst, and you, even though the screen isn't going into focus, you can see that these are their citations. And that was the last of the slides. So, and this was the first one, where just the artist name and then the person who did it, one of their works, and you can see that they put a little bit of text on here, and then they talked about the text.
Here's some more examples of Damien Hirst's work. And that's when the person who put this together, she talks about it a little bit more. And then here's some drawings that I've done with a little bit of text here. And then she expounds on this in her narration. And on this, she talked about how he harvested this shark, how he came across the sheep, where these samples, these biological samples come from. And she talked about that for quite a bit. And here's another example of him where another exhibit that he did. In this case, he took animals and he cut them right in half down the center. And so she talked about this for a while. This is one of his most expensive works that he did, which is a human skull covered with actual diamonds. And so there's a little bit right here, but she expounds on it a bit as well. Here's some more of his works that she talked about. So can you see how she's put this together? So these are basically slides that she uses and she narrates in the background so we can hear what her thoughts about this artist and the artist's work. She uses her annotated bibliography as essentially notes to speak from as she shares her opinion and observation about these things. And then the very last slide is all those her sources. Does that make more sense?
I'd love it if you told us who your favorite one is. Which one was really powerful to you?
If you have any questions, you can comment, but that's Damien Hirst. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I had meant to.
Hi, my name is Rachel Smith, and I
There we
just.
go. Sorry about that. Some of the ones that I really liked, Dohosa has produced some really good ones. The one on Damien Hirst I thought was an excellent example. The time was like exactly perfect. She did a really good job. The Frank Gehry one was really well done as well.
Thank you.
So if we look at, this is another class. This one, the thing that frustrated me about this one, it was well done, but she spoke really fast. And that's why it was so short. So she didn't get all her points because it was under that 6 minutes. So everything else, it was just really well done. It just was not very long. This one was 6 seconds short of the 6 minutes, but this one was really well done. She just spoke a little quickly. These were both really well done. I like this one. This one was well done too. Most of these were pretty good. This one was actually quite a bit longer. And then we found out that the live interview by Tom Allen, he didn't want us to include it on our class show, class channel. So we edited that out and it dropped it below the 6 minute mark. So, but this was a good example other than that. All right, but all of these are, except for this one and that first one, all of these are pretty good with that time as well. Okay? Does that help?
Yeah, so that one, that Tom Tobin or whatever his name was, he specifically said he didn't want his video shown in a classroom setting. We don't have any issues with images though, I'm guessing.
As long as the images are available for use, like all these images are mostly pulled. If you do a Google search and then do advanced search and you click it for use the images in any setting or whatever like that, it should be okay. But I would also recommend trying to get as many of your images as possible from Wikimedia, or at least cite the images, saying, hey, I borrowed this from this site. Since none of these are for commercial use, we can usually get away with stuff. But I think everybody tried really hard to make sure that they got them from Wikimedia, or that there was no limitation on their using the images for an academic presentation. Yeah, in the interview with Tom Allen, Evan actually spoke to him for about 20 minutes and put together like a 5-minute section of that he added to this. And then Tom Allen asked him not to allow it on the class YouTube channel, and that's why we had to edit it out. So try to be really sensitive to intellectual property rights and make sure that you have permission to use the image. But most of these, I will do a search where we go to Google and I'll type in Tom Allen art. Then I can go to more. No, let's see. Go to images. Let's see. We do usage rights. And we go to Creative Commons licenses. And then all of these images are Creative Commons and we can use. So did everybody see that? So I looked up Tom Allen art. Went to tools. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't. Went to images. Then went to tools. Then went to usage rights. Can everybody see that? Creative Commons. Now, if you don't use the Creative Commons ones, you can also go to Wikimedia. Let's see. Oh, that's too bad. I don't remember. Oh, it's .org, sorry. Okay, if we go to Wikimedia, that right there. And then we can type in then all of these are available through the Wikimedia Commons licensing. And they aren't going to give us the same selection. But another thing that you can also do is do a search, and when you find the image, if you find it in an article, what you can do is use the image and then reference the image in the article. And then that gives us a chain, and we can go back, and then it's legal to use. So anybody
Sorry,
have any?
you sort of cut out. Your voice cut out. I don't know if anyone else happened for anyone else, but you cut out.
Oh, I was saying, if you can't find an image you want through Wikimedia Commons or doing that Creative Commons search, you can, if you find the article, or you find the image you want in an article, you can, when you make your slide, do the image and then underneath it have the link to the article. And then that'll give us a reference chain, and it will be okay to use. All right, does that make sense now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions regarding the annotated bibliography? All right.
You cut out again. Sorry, what did you ask?
I said, did you guys have any other questions regarding the annotated bibliography or any of the other things we talked about? And it looks like we have some more people that joined us. So, Shu Chen, are you here? Or Megan Ford? Maria? Catherine? Michael?
Yeah.
You're here?
Mhm.
Yenchen?
Here.
Excellent. Cheyenne? Okay. I wanted to reiterate as well. There are a couple people that haven't told me they've watched any of the videos. The attendance, although it doesn't contribute to the points of your grade, because of department mandate, if you get below 90% attendance, it will start taking away from your grade. If you drop below 90% attendance, it will start affecting your grade in half grade chunks. So I would recommend, it's super easy to go through, watch the previous videos, and then just tell me what the code words are, or if you don't catch the code words, tell me what I talked about. And some people find that they're really good to watch the videos while they work on their projects, just having background noise. Other people find that if they have insomnia, it's really good to listen to the videos to help them soothe into sleep. And our third code word is snore, which I never do. All right, do we have any more questions before I dismiss you guys to enjoy your weekends?
The only
I did
question
just
I
have a
had, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
The only question I had was, is there a formula for your mixing of the paper may, whatever it's called?
Yeah, the formula is essentially you dump out half the glue into that container, half the flour into that container, and then the same volume of glue as in water into that container. And mix that up, use that, and then do it again. I don't know, a lot of people don't have time to do the whole thing in one shebang. And that sometimes that can be really difficult, and that's why I suggest splitting it in half. But basically, the only material you're missing, the two materials you're missing are the fabric or paper towels you're using and water. And the water should just be the same volume as the wood glue. And you can tell how delicately everything is measured, how accurately everything is measured. I think as long as you're close, it's going to work just fine. I like the wood glue as opposed to regular Elmer's glue or PVA, standard PVA, because it seems to harden a little bit stronger than the other stuff. And then you can just spray paint it or use tempera paint or whatever you want over on top, and it works really well. Some of the other paints that are good are fabric dyes work really nice. Mason stains work really good. Water-soluble wood stain, it has a really interesting effect on it. And just like regular house paint can do some really interesting things. So I would say gouache works well. Watercolor does some interesting things, and acrylics as well. So you can use a lot of different kinds of stuff. I think that number one image that I showed you with the black and then the rainbow stripes, I think that person used acrylic. And that worked really well. But if you guys try to just paint the regular straight styrofoam, you are going to be profoundly and emotionally disappointed. It does not work really well at all. All right, any other questions?
I did have just a quick question about the annotated bibliography.
Okay.
If like in the research section for one of the modules, if there's a video on our artists that you have that we like, are we able to use those or not?
I would highly recommend trying to find another video that covers the same information if you can.
Okay.
And on all of those artists, there should be, but if you can't, then you can go ahead and use it. But I would recommend you find another video that covers the same information. If you do a search for Art 21, and then the artist's name, that works really well, and you can get a lot of really good videos from that. I'll write that down in the comments. Okay, can everybody see that? You just do a YouTube search for Art 21 plus the artist's name, and that can give you some really good video resources. Or just you could do the artist name plus philosophy, or artist name plus work, or just the artist name. And there are some really interesting things. Like if you do Jean-Claude and Christo, there is an awful lot of stuff on their different projects. Some really great videos. Any other questions? I think that was a really good question, because technically that is not an incorrect thing to do. But with best practices, when the teacher provides information and you're asked to do research, it's always a good idea to try to find alternate sources that cover the same material. Unless the teacher tells you specifically to use what's provided. But if there's no more questions, then I will tell you, have a wonderful weekend. Any more questions? Last call? No? Then I will tell you, have a great weekend. And I will look forward to seeing you guys on Monday, bright and early.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
We'll see you guys later.
Thanks.